Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to today's session over here. So as usual, we run through the markets and highlight some of the key opportunities that are available to be focusing on, okay? So let's start off with the dollar index over here. Overall, my view is that we are potentially looking at the dollar moving lower. We did again had this little nice rejection around the 108 level. Last week we also talked about this. We do have, if I zoom out onto the daily, okay, we have the market actually respecting this channel pretty neatly. So near term here, we are kind of expecting after this rejection, perhaps a deeper pullback if it's not gonna be a bearish move entirely. Minimally, we're kind of expecting a little bit of a pullback. Then if the dollar were to strengthen, at least short term here, we're still expecting a little bit more downside, right, on the near term perspective. Okay, but of course on the daily scale, we also can see that there are massive downside opportunities should the price actually start to move lower impulsively. Something similar here may actually also occur. Okay. So that's the take on the dollar index. Of course, if you go back down to the lower time frame on the H4, okay, so what we're seeing here is that if we continue to get a little bit more of a corrective pullback, we may start to look out for areas between the 50 and the 618. Okay, ideally price should respect that, and of course, see some nice little rejection of that. Okay, and we are kind of expecting price to actually move lower from there on. Okay. So that's the primary view on the dollar index. Okay, as long as the pullback to the upside is corrective, we are expecting some resistance around 50 and 618. As long as price stays below 108, we'll be more inclined to look for sell side opportunities. Okay. So then on euro dollar, kind of very closely kind of inverted in the relationship of these two. So we're looking at upside potential. The only side about the euro is, of course, we haven't really take out this swing high. Okay, so that is something that we are lacking in terms of the confirmation where price is starting to maybe move higher. Okay, now of course, if you zoom out again on the higher time frame perspective, we can see that price is essentially kind of consolidating in this range, right? We did take out that low, and of course we have a nice little bounce there as well. So same thing as the dollar index. Okay, we are looking at some sort of a decent retracement, if not then a potential reversal to the upside. So right now I'm still looking at bullish opportunity. With it came down and tagged the 50%. But as I said, we haven't taken out this, right? So the confirmation is for price to actually break out of this high impulsively. That will give us the extra confirmation that we might be looking for upside, at least moving forward from there. Okay, so this one here, as it stands now, we're bullish. Okay, but those are some of the things to note as I covered. Okay, so keep an eye on that. And for the pound dollar here, I'm more leaning towards the neutral point of view. The reason is because it's not the clearest directional bias that we can establish at this moment. So price actually tagged this high, but again, you can see how it's tagged. It's not very impulsive. It didn't really like break out with momentum. And right now, the market seems to be reacting off that as well. Okay, so this is a little bit of a mix. From a wave count perspective, if we're going to take from this swing high as a major high to get started, we can actually see that we have potentially the orange in 5, of course, and then that will build into the wave 3 in black, right? And of course, if that's going to be wave 3, this might be wave 4, and we can expect one more push to break this low. So that's very possible, but at the same time, what we can also observe here is that if we get some sort of a support as price comes down and taking out this high here with momentum, we can reassess that count, right? So it's not there are a couple of uncertainties right now that doesn't give us a clear high probability directional bias. Okay, so for that reason here, I'm just gonna be neutral on the pound dollar. And of course, there are much better opportunities on other instruments, and that's the reason why I think probably don't want to focus too much on the pound at the moment. Okay, and then we have Aussie. Aussie here is also very much on the neutral point of view. Market has been consolidating, range bound for I don't know, good couple of weeks. So I'm just waiting for price to actually take out and kind of like break all of this range before making any decision. Okay, so this is just going to maintain a neutral point of view, I think, throughout the week itself. Then we have the dollar Canadian. So dollar Canadian is neutral for the reason of this low hasn't really been taken out. So I don't want to be so quickly committing to the downside. However, if you go over on the higher time frame perspective, or if I zoom out a little bit, right? From this low here, we have obviously a very extended move. And we are also having this little rejection down, right? Because this also happens back then. But we are looking at possibly the 5 wave in orange may have been completed. Of course, as I mentioned, the confirmation is this, right? So if you are a bit more on the aggressive side, of course, 15 and 6.8 Fibonacci may present some sort of a opportunity to look out for. And of course, the invalidation will be where that previous swing high is. To be a bit more aggressive in looking for the sell in anticipation of that, the safer or more conservative side is to actually wait for price to break below that swing low, and then that pullback correction to be committing to the downside. That will naturally be more conservative. That will give you the extra confirmation that price has indeed start to move lower. Okay, so I think right now it's just going to be more or less a neutral point of view, but of course with the key area around that 15 and 6.8 as I mentioned, as a potential area that you can look for opportunities if that's something that fit for you. Then we have the we have the dollar yen. Okay, dollar yen here, my bias for the week is turning bullish, but of course that is more of a short-term perspective, where we are looking at a 5 wave potentially completed in orange. So short-term, a significant pullback. Turning bullish doesn't mean that it's uptrend. Okay, turning bullish is basically my point of view where you might not want to focus on the downside at this moment, and within the week or two, there is a good chance that we can look for short-term buy, right? Okay, and of course, it's not confirmed that the pullback has started. That's why the reason of turning bullish. The confirmation that I need to see, of course, is this minor swing high. If price can take it out, that gives us a confirmation that the pullback may be starting, right? And if the pullback is starting, then some minor key areas that you can look out for is the 15 and 6.8, and that open up for a short-term buy opportunity for the dollar yen. Right? Now, of course, if you bring in the RSI indicator, we are also seeing a very obvious divergence currently developing. So that also gives me a clue that fifth wave is more or less going to be completing soon. If you are conservative, wait for that confirmation. If you are more aggressive, you can go down to the lower time frame and start to look for opportunities as a breakout, perhaps, to get involved in trade setups, right? So that's on dollar yen. Okay, probably for me, I don't think there will be a trade that I can get involved for the week itself, because I would love to see some sort of a confirmation before looking for the setup. Okay, for dollar yen here, right? Then we have gold. Gold right now I'm neutral because the overall structure is basically trading between this swing high and the swing low. But for the internals of it, we do see a nice little impulse, potentially a correction. That's going to be the case. We're expecting one more drop. Okay, and if I can't pull it even further, that will potentially bring this up and then one more move down, right? So right now I'm neutral. The part here is we don't have a very huge directional bias that we can stick to, unless price really gives us that clarity of coming down and then going back up and then coming down and then of course eventually upside, right? But for that to develop, there's a lot of prerequisite that price needs to form first. So if you're in the near term, I'm looking at if this continues to form correctively towards this area at 2680, we can potentially see this as a WXY for a short-term sell. Okay, with a target at the swing low. Of course, that would build in that 1, 2, 3, and then this will be our impulse, and this will be the correction, right? So that would be the nearest possible structure setup that we can look into for gold, right? And of course, the invalidation of that particular trade idea will be where that previous swing high is, around 2720. Okay, so that's something to note in terms of gold, and of course the directional bias of that. Silver here is a little bit of a different structure as compared to gold. This one here is not as clean, okay, and of course this is very similar to the Aussie, right? You can see how price has been consolidating. So this one again, as I would say, neutral. Probably not much that we can talk about or even look out. Okay, so wait for that clarity, confirmation in terms of like breaking the previous high or low with momentum, and then we'll take a look after that. Okay, but for now, we just leave it aside. Then we have crude oil. Crude oil here, I'm looking at turning bullish. Okay, we are also in a very consolidated environment, but the higher time frame actually give me a little bit of a slight directional bias in terms of we are testing the bottom of this potential channel. So I'm leaning towards price potentially pushing up, and then of course we have a little bit of a crawl of a development at the bottom. Okay, so that give me a little bit of a bias to look for upside, right? And of course, on the lower time frame here on the H4, we are also seeing that crawlish structure. Okay, if I bring in RSI, okay, we don't have that extreme, right? But it's still a divergence that is developing over there, right? What I mean by extreme is, of course, price didn't really go over so. Okay, but internally we have that divergence building up here as well. So I'm actually expecting more upside, right? And of course, the confirmation is for price to really take out some of this minor swing high with momentum. That would confirm the upside is starting, okay? And then you can wait for a correction, and that would be your trade setup to look for the retest of that previous swing high. Okay. Yeah, so that's on the crude oil side of things. Okay, S&P, I'm neutral in this because the current market is of course breaking that, but we are basically still the top of it, right? If you get a correction down, that will open up upside. If we get a nice strong move to the downside, then we'll expect a deeper pullback. Really depends on how the market is going to move forward from here, right? So in terms of index, I think S&P may not be the best to be focusing on within the week. NASDAQ here potentially doing some sort of a top, right? So previously we were looking at this, we did not get that rejection. Okay, so to update this, probably price would test this. If it gives us a false break, okay, breaking up and then coming back down very impulsively, this might build into some sort of a flat structure. Okay, very possible. So of course, near term, we might not get a clear setup or direction to be focusing on this index, especially on the US side of things. It's just something to be monitoring, keeping an eye on it, and then when things set up, then that will be the opportunities. Okay, but for now, this week I don't think there will be anything within the US market. Okay, German DAX did break the previous swing high structure with momentum. You can see that, right? A very clean break. So obviously this would give us a bullish bias, okay? And moving forward, any sort of a corrective pullback naturally will be seen as a buy trade opportunity. Okay, so German DAX here definitely bullish. Wait for the setup. That is going to be a trade opportunity. FTSE over here is also building up. So of course the fifth wave is developing. We are bullish on this. Okay, the idea is again, wait for any sort of a corrective pullback. That would be a buy trade setup. Okay, A50, Hang Seng, this too, I'm maintaining a bearish bias. Current development seems a little bit corrective in nature. We are expecting price to take out that swing high and then kind of start to move lower. Okay, something like this to complete this tree wave, and of course to complete the bigger tree wave as well. Right. So A50, the China markets, we are continuing to be bearish. We are expecting more downside, to look out for that. Hang Seng here, quite similar. Okay, I mean, if the A50 is moving lower, then there's a very high chance the correlation with the Hang Seng market will also push price lower. Okay, so yeah, this is on Hang Seng side. Pretty much similar structure here. We might take out that high and then market come back down. Okay, Aussie side of things, bullish. However, the recent move to the upside seems a little bit more of a overlapping move. We do have this trend line here as well, so there are some minor lows that we are expecting price to take out before the continuation. So direction is there because we managed to take out that high, but again, this is very corrective. We expect some sort of a pullback first. Okay. Yeah, so that's on the Aussie. Switzerland side of things, pretty much the same here. We want to see some sort of a correction before kind of committing to the upside. Okay. So in terms of like direction itself, the German DAX, the Aussie, as well as the Switzerland side, we have clear direction that we can focus on. In terms of like A50 and Hang Seng, we also have clear direction, which is bearish. But of course, all this index for the week itself right now, we don't have a setup. Okay, we don't have a setup, so that's something you want to wait out for. Okay, so going back to my main list, the pound yen here and the odd yen here, we are bearish. But of course, you want to wait for the setup to take the trade. I would believe that the yen pairs here has massive downside opportunity, right? You can see on the pound yen. This may be a 5-wave structure and then a correction, and then we expect one more drop, retest the bottom. Okay. Most of the yen pairs are developing quite similarly, like you look at Aussie yen here as well. Okay, we have this top, market move up, this might start to come back and retest the bottom. So yeah, the yen pairs here seems to be presenting some very, very obvious and clear direction. The part is to simply wait for some sort of a setup for you to be looking at the trade. Okay. Then we have the pound Australia. So pound Australia here, I'm looking at a buy trade opportunity. We have a very nice little 1 2 3 1 2 3, and then of course 1 2 3. The price moved higher, taking out that trend line, and then of course forming a minor crawl at the top of that as well. So we are expecting, if we can get a pullback towards the 50 and 618 correctively, that would present a buy trade opportunity, at least to complete a 1 2 3 simple 3-wave structure. Okay. If I zoom out a little bit, we're essentially in this consolidation, right? So we're just trading the internals of the range. Okay, so that's on the pound odd. I think that's where the opportunity is. Okay. Lastly, we have Bitcoin. Bitcoin may be developing a correction pullback. Okay. Right now, what I'm looking at is we have this as a 1 2, potentially 3. A little bit of a regular flat kind of structure. If we can get price back to somewhere around 92,000, that might be a nice little opportunity to expect one more push, right? My target for Bitcoin over here will be somewhere around 120, 120,000. Because historically, after every halving, Bitcoin prices tends to double. So prior to this year halving, Bitcoin prices were trading around 60,000. So if you double it, that put us around 120,000, right? So that essentially becomes the target as of now. right? This structure here is pretty clean as well. If you can get a pullback towards the 92,000 to 89 or 90,000, that would be pretty decent area for an opportunity to buy. Right? Yeah, so that's a couple of things that I have on the table. The focus will be very much on the highlighted pairs you can see over here, right? Pound odd, gold, okay, dollar CAD, depending on whether you want to wait for the confirmation or not. That will be the main focus for the week itself. Okay. Um, yeah, that's generally it. Cool. Hope things is clear. In terms of like the overall market direction bias and some of the key areas and levels to keep an eye on, right? As well as the focus for trading opportunities within the week. A quick one. Any questions that you guys would have? All good. Cool. Yeah. So if there's no questions, I think generally that's okay. I see one here. Australia Swiss franc. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, I think Australia Swiss franc has a little bit of a topish kind of double top structure over there. One of the very clear structure here I see is the three wave development to the downside here as well. Okay, we do have this development. So what I'm saying here, there is a good possibility we are potentially looking at this development, right? Okay, not the cleanest in terms of the double top, right? Ideally double top should be somewhere at the higher price point, but it's still a pretty obvious double top that's forming. Okay, so the expectation of this here would be, I would say there's a good odds. We'll see one more push to the downside, right? And if that's the case, of course, we can see over here, the current pullback phase is also pretty corrective in nature. So I would put this here as a invalidation high. If we can actually get maybe a little bit of a pullback towards like 50% mark, that would open up an opportunity to sell. Of course, the breakout here would be this minor low, right? If you can get an impulsive break below this structure, that would give us that confirmation of the downside. Okay. So of course, this one here, if you're interested to potentially even consider a sell trade, the 50% mark would be a pretty okay setup. And then of course, we're looking at this kind of this kind of a setup, right? A trade setup, like looking to enter around 50, and then of course your invalidation is your stop. Then you're looking at the bottom of the channel as your target, right? Yeah, so I think off franc, that will be something to note. Okay, so if add to a list, that will be something that we can focus on as well. Okay, quick one here on Ethereum. Okay, Ethereum actually is bullish too, right? Kind of trying to break that. Of course, we also have this trend line which is already broken. Okay, but the current development here you can see is starting to lose its momentum, right? So I would say in the near term, there's a good possibility that Ethereum may actually do some sort of a significant pullback, perhaps towards somewhere around this territory at 3,260-ish, before actually continuing to the upside, and it can even actually come back down as deep as this level before going up, right? Okay, this entire leg here isn't very impulsive overall. So the direction is bullish. I mean, if Bitcoin is bullish, it tends to pull and drag most of the crypto together with it. But this one here, potentially some sort of a pullback. I mean, Bitcoin, we're also expecting it's some sort of a pullback, right? So yeah, this one here, in terms of Ethereum, kind of expecting some sort of a pullback. If we can get that, obviously, this area would be a good, decent buy opportunity, right? And I mean, Ethereum hasn't really tested its all-time high yet. I would foresee that happening, where I would say like overall Ethereum is going to be bullish. You can definitely focus on upside, right? Yeah, that's the one. All good. All right, cool. So yeah, if that's all, hopefully it's clear for today's session. I'm giving you some ideas and the overview of the market itself. So all the best, and again, we'll see you guys in the next session. Okay, night, bye bye.